Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We pray to the Divine to lead us from this transitory existence, Asato. Asat means that which is constantly changing, that which is not permanent. To lead us from this transitory existence to that which is unchanging, which is our Atman nature. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, lead us from the darkness of spiritual ignorance to the light of self-knowledge. Vrityarma Amritam Gamaya, lead us from this existence, this physical human existence, which is bound to culminate in death, to that state which is beyond death, Amritam Gamaya. This is the spirit of the prayer that should come from the heart of the spiritual seeker. Not just reciting the mantra mechanically, but behind that should be this intense yearning, and the prayer should come from the depths of one's heart to reach the divine. Over the last few weeks, we have been discussing various forms of meditation and contemplation on the Atman or the divine within our heart during our meditation to focus on different aspects of the divine, the infinite purity of the divine, the beauty of the divine, the knowledge of the divine, the state of supreme peace of the divine, and so on. And last Saturday, we talked about the how the spiritual knowledge can help us conquer fear. That was something very relevant over the last 2-3 years with the coming of the COVID. People's lives have been very much disturbed, and one of the common emotions, negative emotions, is the fear that they have been all facing because things around them have been very, very disruptive. They have lost things like work, property, family members, confronted with death itself, and it has totally shaken the whole world. So we talked about how to overcome fear from a spiritual point of view. Today, we are going to go a little deeper into that and say, how do we conquer the fear of death itself? Because that is one thing we will all have to come across, confront, as sure as the sun that will rise tomorrow. In the same way, we are sure that one day this human existence will come to an end. And so different people confront this in various ways. Many are there who probably like bury the head in the sand, like the ostrich. Others try to run and hide from it. No matter how far and how much we run, we can never hide from it forever. So we have to confront this. And then there are others who said, well, let us get ready for it. Face the brutes, not run away from it. It reminds me of an incident that happened in the life of Swami Vivekananda, and he used to refer to it once when he was visiting the holy city of Varanasi in Kashi. After visiting one of the temples, I think the temple of the Divine Mother Durga, he was walking down a narrow aisle, and in Kashi, there are these monkeys who live around the temples and feed on the offerings given by the devotees. They are also the residents of the place, and some of them are pretty huge. Anyway, as the Swami Vivekananda was walking down the path, he turned around and he saw a troop of monkeys were following him. So they were not small monkeys. So he quickened his pace and he looked around and saw the monkeys were also had started quickened their pace. He started running a little bit, and the monkeys started chasing him. And So as all this was happening, suddenly he heard the voice of a monk who was watching the whole spectacle, and who shouted to him, "Face the brutes." And instinctively, Swamiji turned around, stopped and turned around, and the monkeys fled. He used to narrate this incident and said, "Look, in life, problems will be there. They'll start following you slowly. They might be small things. And when you try to escape them, different ways to resolve them, quicken your pace, so to say, then you find that they also start chasing you more and more. And at some point, you are sprinting and you find these problems of the world are giving you a hot pursuit. So, two options are there. One is to try to outrun them, the other one is to try to face them. And when it comes to death, well, we all know that we cannot outrun it. So we have to learn how to face it. So that being the situation, uh, let us say, how do we face this challenge of death in our life? So this fear of death sprouts from ignorance, spiritual ignorance, ignorance of our true nature. The true nature is that at the core of our being, we are all spiritual beings. Atman, the soul, the self, which the saints and sages who have attained that level of self-realization, they inform us that the self is eternal and immortal. So let us explore what does it mean. Death means, to be more precise, we should use the word death of the body, death of the mind, death of the ego. We cannot use the word death of the soul. We can say the soul has departed. It has abandoned this body and has extricated itself out of it and has moved out of it. That's all that we can say about death. But the soul itself does not die. So death is a form of destruction, destruction of the body. Only that can be destroyed, which itself is a combination of some things. When two elements come together, they form a compound. Certain forces will hold that compound together. And at some point, the forces that are holding it together will not be sufficient to maintain that. That is the sthiti state. And so it will break apart, and that is the vinasha, death of. So whatever in this universe is a product, is a combination, whether it's combination of food that we eat that has become the physical body, or the energies that are in our mind that forms a whirlpool in the ocean of the cosmic mind, all of them will at some point disentangle. This is the law of nature. Anything that is in Prakriti, in nature, made of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, is a combination. And no combination can forever maintain its identity. At some point, it will fizzle out, and that fizzling moment where one level disconnects with the other, that means the mind and the jivatma connects with the physical body, just like a person who has put on a shirt, takes it off because it's old and worn out. Likewise, the jivatma will abandon the physical body, and we who sort of think that the real identity was that of the body, think that the soul has died, really, when only the body has been abandoned, and therefore it will disintegrate and resolve to the very elements that it has come out of, which is the physical elements that make this physical universe. So that is what is death. To be more precise, we should always say the death of the body. We cannot say the death of the Atman. So when this problem of death was confronted Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, let's take a look at that. Because this is a constant theme in the Kathopanishad. Nachiketa goes to Yamaraj, and after getting two boons, the third boon, the most important one, was that on the subject of death. What happens after death? When people die, is there something that remains, or there's nothing remains at the end of it? So that is the question question Nachiketa asked Yamaraj, and that becomes the subject matter of the Kathopanishad, a very poetic, beautiful Upanishad. If you have not read, you should read that, and you'll find uh, beautifully the Upanishadic messages taught there. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, the great warrior, learned, highly accomplished, fearless, is confronted with the situation where he has to now face the, the duty, dharma, that is there as a warrior, to kill his own relatives. And when he is confronted with that solution, something within him gives up and gives in. And so he is confused about his dharma. He talks to Arjuna, in his understanding that he should not fight anymore. And then Sri Krishna, Arjuna asks Sri Krishna, and Sri Krishna responds by giving this knowledge of the Atman. That look, you are in ignorance, though you speak like a wise man, you are ignorant of the true nature of people, yourself and others around there. What you see outside is externally is the physical body, but internally, spiritually, they are all the Atman. And the Atman is never born, it does not die, it is eternal and immortal. Ajo nityam shashvatoyam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. The Atman is unborn, aja, nityam, eternal, shashvat, beyond time, beyond creation, so to say. Purana, the eternal being. Na hanyate hanyamare sharire. When the body is killed or destroyed, the Atman is not destroyed. Elsewhere in another verse he says, Nainam chindanti sastrani, nainam dati pavaka. This Atman is not, cannot be cut by the sword, cannot be dried by the, cannot be burned by the fire, and all that. That means it is beyond the reach of any of these physical changes that can happen in this material world, to the body, to the mind, to the ego. Such is the eternal Atman, the eternal immortal Atman. So that is the knowledge of the Atman that was introduced. And then not only did Sri Krishna tell Arjuna this knowledge, which is an intellectual understanding of the subject of what happens, or what is the nature of the Atman, but he teaches him how that he too can arrive at a experience of that Atman itself. And what are the various forms of training, which are the various yogas: bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and what internal faculties have to be developed. The buddhi, the subtle buddhi, the power of discrimination, the renunciation of vairagya, that are the aids in the spiritual journey to the seeker of self-knowledge. So Sri Krishna then goes into detail and explains to him. He also explains to him that beyond the individual, beyond the Jivatman, there is another higher self, higher being called the Paramatman. And that is the super soul, the sum total of all beings that are there. That's the ocean behind all the waves. And that ocean is the source of all knowledge, beauty, bliss, purity, and all activities in this world. Whether a leaf is going to blow, or a word is spoken, or sense activity happens in the body, everything is, all these activities are only possible because of that power of consciousness that comes from the eternal Paramatman. And so that Paramatman is the real doer of all actions. So there's a relationship between the Jivatman and Paramatman, that what apparently seems to be taking place through the Jivatman really has its origin in this eternal source of the Paramatman. In other words, the Jivatman is only an instrument in the hands of the divine. And when that understanding comes, the relationship between the Jivatman and the Paramatman, then the whole dynamics of actions, activities in this world for that individual person totally changes. He no longer feels that he is the doer of things or the enjoyer. He feels that he is mere merely an instrument in the hands of the divine. And Sri Krishna teaches this particular knowledge to Arjuna. Out of this understanding and knowledge arises a sense of devotion, devotion to the Supreme Being, and a wonderful relationship between the devotee and the Supreme Being, seeking the grace of the divine for knowledge, for devotion, for self realization, because everything is in the hands of the divine power. So, that is the basis of uh, that understanding is the basis of the path of devotion, the relationship between the Jivatma and Paramatma. So we have got two sets of teachings here. One is the path of knowledge, wherein the individuals focuses on the eternal, immortal nature of the Atman, the nameless, the formless, the eternal being. And self-knowledge is the bridge to that immortality. Amritasya setu. So setu means the bridge. Bridge connects two points, two banks. And it's a means by which travelers can cross over the river without getting wet into the water, without getting drenched in it. Easier way. You just walk over the bridge. So self-knowledge is the bridge which helps us transcend or move from the lower planes of identification with the body, with the mind, with the ego, to the other shore of the river or the ocean of samsara, which is the Atman nature, Brahman nature, where we become identified with the eternal existence, knowledge, bliss. In that knowledge, existence, and bliss, we understand that we are not a body, not the mind, not the ego, none of this phenomenon or upadhis that we have attached ourselves to in this world, but really we are that infinite ocean, not the wave, the ocean of consciousness. And the moment that is realized and experienced, in that moment we realize that we experience that we are the immortal being. That means it is deathless. Death cannot touch it. The death can only touch the body, in the mind, in the individuality. Actually, for self-realization, this total disconnection with this individuality and personality are necessary. You cannot have both of it. You cannot be on the two banks of the river. Yes, you can cross to the other side, realize your true nature, and if the divine wills and sends a person back to the human plane for the purpose of disseminating spiritual knowledge, these are the great spiritual teachers, Acharya Shankara, or the Incarnation Sukha, or even great souls like Swami Vivekananda, who after attaining samadhi return to the human plane so that they can disseminate and share the knowledge with people all around. So that being the situation, the spiritual realized souls return to the human plane. But for those who are not destined for that, for this particular mission on life, these are the jiva kotis, they will merge into the supreme being and not return, just like a wave merges into the ocean and suddenly all its limitations fall off and it realizes or experiences itself as the supreme being, infinite, in its all glory and power. That is the power of the self-realization, and that confers upon that seeker this wonderful boon of fearlessness. Because death is not avoidable, is unavoidable, death of the body, but it cannot touch the immortal Atman. So that is a spiritual seeker always contemplates on the eternal immortal nature of the Atman, and as with every contemplation, with every study, with every meditation, he builds up these samskaras in the mind, the samskaras relating to the eternal nature of the soul. And as that idea becomes stronger and stronger and stronger through constant contemplation and meditation, then at the last moment when he leaves this body, hopefully that becomes the predominant idea, because whatever we think at the time of departing from the body, that thought determines the path of the onward journey of the soul. So if he is identified or contemplates on the nature of the Atman, repeats that mantra, Shivoham, Shivoham, I am the eternal being, and departs from the body in that way, then that person, according to the Bhagavad Gita, will merge into the Supreme Being, the Atman. So that is one way, if the person is not realized during his own lifetime. But if through a lot of sincere tapasya and austerity, a person realizes the truth in this lifetime itself, then he is established in that knowledge. And the interesting thing about the moment of death, most of the time you'll find that one is not in very good control over one's own faculties. Death can come all of a sudden, just like somebody getting a heart attack or having an accident, and there's no time to think and prepare to contemplate on the Atman. Or it could be that through some disease, or normally time we see that people drift into a situation where they have hardly any control over themselves. They drift into a coma type situation, and therefore again their reasoning and all that is not strong enough there to remind them that I should be repeating the name of the divine or the mantra or thinking of the Atman. So in that way, if we leave things to chance like that, then there's no guarantee that we can sort of have a safe exit, thinking that at the last moment we will think of the divine and therefore reach the truth. So are we helpless then? So self-knowledge, if we can have it in this lifetime, that is a sure short process. And then definitely at the moment of death, you are in full control. The other path is the path of the devotee who pursues the life of spiritual practices in a spirit of surrender, meditates on his chosen ideal in his heart, lives a very pure life of austerity, truthfulness, and devotion, kindness, compassion, and all these wonderful spiritual qualities are cultivated through thoughts, words, and deeds. And in that way, he also develops a tremendous faith in his chosen ideal, the teachings of the scriptures, a very childlike, sincere, pure mind, which is totally bereft of any of those doubts and obstructions that creep into the mind because somebody gives a counter argument. They have such simple, pure faith in the teachings, the spiritual teachings. For example, if you tell somebody that, look, in the scriptures say, and Sri Ramakrishna has himself seen how Lord Shiva, out of his own grace, liberates any soul that dies in the holy city of Kashi. Sri Ramakrishna, when he visited Varanasi, took a boat ride, and as he was passing by the Manikarnika Ghat, he had this wonderful vision. He went into Samadhi and a wonderful vision in which he saw Lord Shiva visiting every funeral pyre and uttering the mantra, the Tarak Brahma mantra, into the ear of the Jivatma. And the Divine Mother herself, with her own hands, was untying all the bonds that were binding the soul, the gross, the subtle, and the causal, and freeing the soul so that it merged into the absolute. Sri Ramakrishna saw that, and he described whatever he saw to the devotees and verified what was written and believed and understood by the people there. Now, when we narrate this to devotees or people, we have two types of responses. One, they are the devotees who have this pure mind and heart, and they simply believe that. It's not a simple simpleton type of belief. It's a very strong, firm faith in the teachings of these great souls. And that disposition of the mind, that openness to receive the truth, makes it much easier compared to somebody who has got a bit of a Western education and wants everything to be explained rationally, and they want to use their own mind and intellect as the measure by which they will judge the and verify what is taught or has been claimed through the experiences of realized souls who had to do so much of spiritual practice to achieve that. When that is the case, when that is uh, the case, then you find that the intellect itself, being the helper in the spiritual journey, becomes more of a problem uh, and becomes a barrier to that. So the path of devotion in this Kali Yuga is the easiest path. Sri Ramakrishna would say, in this age, Kali Yuga, Annagata Prana. The mind of the person is too much focused on the body, Annamaya Kosha. And therefore, it's very difficult to detach one's mind, no matter how much we say, Shivoham, Shivoham, no matter how much we say, I'm not the body, the mind, the soul, and all those ideas. There are various thoughts, stotras that we can repeat, but that is not translated into an actual experience. And so something is better than nothing. But for a devotee, he doesn't, he understands the limitations of where his mind is. So he takes recourse and surrenders to the divine chosen ideal, that aspect of the divine, who has promised that whoever surrenders totally and at the feet of the divine itself will come at the last moment and do the needful for the devotee to free him. So Sri Ramakrishna says, if you take one step towards God, the personal God, then God takes 10 steps towards the devotee. And a devotee has that simple faith that he will live up your life, and whatever is necessary for his spiritual well-being, that will be taken care of by his chosen ideal. In the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and the teachings of Holy Mother, we hear many devotees would go and receive the mantra, initiation from the Holy Mother. And at that time, Mother would give the initiation and would say, whatever was necessary, I have given unto you. Do your japa and meditation if you want to have some experience. Otherwise, I have done all that is necessary for you. And sometimes we hear a conversation between a brahmachari, a devotee, a disciple of Mother's mother. Well, what happens if I don't do my japa and meditation at all? You've given the mantra. Mother said also, well, I will take care of that. Uh, whoever has truly taken shelter at the feet of Sri Ramakrishna, at the time of death, he will personally come and receive the soul. And I too, as a mother, will also be there. Now, disciple, a devotee will have that particular faith. And that's more than sufficient. And so they live the life in the prayer and meditation. But that faith is what saves them through. People underestimate the power of faith. They think it's simply some belief, and there's no substance, or it's not something as strong as solid reason behind it. It's not backed up by that. But ultimately, or they say faith is blind. We hear that conversation between in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, where Sri Ramakrishna says, well, then does the reason has eyes to see? So, but we see Sri Ramakrishna explains that in a beautiful way, and in a story, he says, a man got washed away on the bank of Lanka. And when he was, the Bhivishna was the king of Lanka, so he saw a human being very much like his Lord Rama. So he was very happy to see somebody resembling and reminding him of his chosen ideal, his God. And after taking good care of him, he said, okay, now you can go back, and I will give you a piece of paper. He wrote something and tied it to his piece of cloth, and he said, have faith in this, and you can walk on the water, but do not open it in the way. So the man started working in the water and said, wow, that simple faith in the power of the name, whatever was written there, enabled him to work through. As he was working through, doubt, samshaya entered into his mind. He said, what is that in that Vibhishana has written and tied to a piece of cloth that gives me the power to walk over water? So he untied the piece of cloth, the cloth, and took out a piece of paper and saw the name of Rama written there. And in his mind came an idea, oh, only Ram. Is that all? And the moment that doubt came, he sank. So Sri Ramakrishna would say, look, once doubt enters into the mind, it undoes the power of faith. So sometimes it is good to have that simple faith of a child, just like Sri Ramakrishna explains this also. Whatever the mother says, the child believes until a certain age. Beyond that, when the intellect kicks in, then he wants to have an explanation. That's where the teenage problems start. But look at the simplicity and the faith of a child. Total belief in the words of the mother. Whatever the mother says, that particular person is your uncle, the child believes it. That is your cousin, he believes it. Uh, and that type of faith is necessary, is a wonderful asset in the spiritual journey. So a devotee has this faith in the scriptures, in the teachings of the divine, in the mantra, that by repeating the mantra, and the mantra is not any different from his chosen ideal, and the mantra is also not different from him, but by repeating the mantra with great love and concentration, one's body and mind will be purified and confer upon the seeker, the devotee, the wonderful flowers of self-realization. He has that particular faith. And so, and he strengthens that through his own sadhana. As his mind becomes purer, then he is able to get a glimpse of those teachings of his guru and the spiritual teachers that really are true. And let me narrate another incident that happened in the life of one of the disciples of Swami Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Yogananda. He's a young man. He came to Sri Ramakrishna and frequented him, and Sri Ramakrishna blessed him. He was destined to become yogin before his becoming a monk, as Swami Yogananda. He was destined to become a monk, so Sri Ramakrishna trained him that way. And one day, Sri Ramakrishna, he came to Sri Ramakrishna as a young man. He didn't want to get married and all that, but his mother had made an arrangement, and to honor the words of his mother, he married. But he had no particular interest in family life and all that. One day he came to Sri Ramakrishna and asked him, how do we conquer this animal desire of lust? And he was expecting maybe from Sri Ramakrishna to be taught some yogic poses or whatever, is something complicated and esoteric or mysterious as a special rite or something to be performed. Sri Ramakrishna said to him, repeat the name of the Lord, the mantra, and the lustful desires will become weaker and subside, and you'll be able to control them. So in the mind of this young man, he said, what? Is that all? And a little bit of doubt came into his mind. And maybe he doesn't know anything better, so therefore he has just given me this very, very simple solution of repeating the mantra. But since he was a sadhaka, had a certain degree of purity of mind, that sattva element in his mind came back to his rescue and said, well, why not I try it? Only then I should be able to say whether it works or not. So this is what happens. A devotee, a spiritual seeker, will not poo-poo any spiritual teaching and use his own intellect as the yardstick to measure the veracity or the truth of spiritual teaching. And so in this way, he practiced what Sri Ramakrishna had told, and to his amazement and surprise, he found that what he was told to be a very simple solution was really very, very effective. So sometimes the spiritual teachings are very, very simple. We look for complicated solutions by torturing the text in the scriptures and complicated explanations of things. But the greatest truths are the most simplest. And some you don't require a very complicated mind, intellect to decipher the thing. So here we're talking about the path of devotion. He has the faith that having taken shelter at the feet of his chosen ideal, which is a tremendous spiritual power, uh, and that divine will navigate him through the various stages of life and land him on the other shore of fearlessness and self-realization. We generally find that also that those who are very sincere devotees, who have really taken up their spiritual life very sincerely, they are blessed by God. But many times we find that in their life, towards the end of their life, they have a lot of sufferings. And in some people's mind, it shakes them, their faith. How is it that though when they have taken the divine mantra, they do the japa and meditation with great sincerity, how come there's so much suffering here? It could be some physical malady. Sometimes it happens. Many a time it's cancer or something. A prolonged illness is there. Uh, those who are sincere devotees will understand this much also, that when God is gracious, then and that graciousness, ultimate grace would be giving mukti and freedom, then all those prarabdha and all those karmas that are there, which were not probably meant to be worked out in this lifetime only. We needed a few more lifetimes to work them out. But because God is now gracious to make this the final life, and therefore he will engineer some means by which those remaining karmas are worked out. And therefore, some form of disease will set in, but they will have that faith and they will be given that strength to bear that patiently, and that understanding also that it's not that the divine has abandoned them in this last moment, but really he is very, very much actively involved in working out all those karmas so that they are worked out, finished in this life itself, and there is no reason for that person to be reborn again. It's how we approach, understand suffering. Suffering is God's compassion, Holy Mother says. And through that, he tries to educate us that there's no eternal peace and happiness in this physical existence. And through that understanding comes a strong vairagya that I don't want to come here. That's one of the outcomes of suffering. The other outcome is that, like I just explained, various karmas that were accumulated from previous lifetimes are worked out, and the jiva is then free, or the divine is able to then free him from future births. But the devotee has great faith that the moment he departs or closes his eyes or departs from the body, he will be received on the other side by his chosen ideal. He'll be in the spiritual company and he'll be in the safe hands of the divine, which is a much better and safer state of being than in this physical body, especially if that person is old, sickly, suffering, full of pain. Well, to be separated from this sick old body and freed from that pain itself is a release. I have come across people who, towards the end of life, when they are in this situation and the pain becomes unbearable, literally asking to be relieved of that pain, asking for death, because they know only death can separate them from that suffering and pain. So, but they have that faith that when they close their eyes and leave this world of the company of friends and relatives and all that, and are on their own on the other side, or they are on the other side, they are not alone, but the divine comes, the chosen ideal on whom they have been meditating, repeating the name of the mantra for throughout their lifetime, is there as the final refuge who will hold the hands of the devotee and lead him to that ultimate abode. Such is the faith of the devotee. So, ways to conquer fear of death. One is to realize the eternal, immortal nature of the Atman that requires tremendous amount of spiritual discipline to be practiced. And in the path of knowledge, the path of devotion is to follow the spiritual disciplines, but everything is surrendered to the divine, and let the divine navigate the person through the various bends of this river of life and lead that person to the ocean of self-realization, or Atman or Brahman, or the ocean of pure consciousness. Such is the are the two uh, paths. One has to establish a particular relationship with the divine. Sri Ramakrishna says, one of the bhavas, and strengthen that through sadhana, test it out through the various experiences in the journey of our life, that one is not alone, but really there is a divine power that regulates the affairs of the whole world, from whom we have come, by whom we are sustained every moment, to whom we will return. That is not a distant, um, unattached being who has no interest in our personal life, but because we are communicating with him, he also responds. We take one step towards him, he takes 10 steps towards, with the assurance that we are a person of his interest. And that interest means, in some way, spiritual knowledge, mantras, all those things come to us, and our mind grows in devotion. We practice spiritual disciplines for the purification of the mind, and in this way, we prepare ourselves for the last exit from this world. Holy Mother would say that how we leave this world life of 70, 80, 90 years, wherein we have done so many things, accomplished so many uh, things in this world. Mostly it might be you got yourself educated, got married, had children, brought them up, provided them with food, clothing, shelter, taking care of people around you in the community, and all those. These are what most people do. And that's a mark of whether you have been successful in life or not. So you have gone through all those type of things. And as we approach old age, then the duties are not uh, become less, the capacity to work becomes less, and either we are in some aged care home, or in some way just spending our days, if one is not spiritually inclined to live, or if one is very spiritually inclined, then they drop all the botherations with the world and focus totally with the remaining time on that spiritual goal, dedicate themselves to prayer and meditation, going on pilgrimages, and giving up all the botherations with uh, things of the world, leaving to the children and grandchildren, so to say. So they prepare for the journey of life. What happens at the last moment? That is the proof of what we have achieved, the summary, the accomplishment of one's lifetime. And if at the last moment one is not afraid to fear of death, one knows, embraces death, it is there all the time, just behind you, touching you on the shoulder. At any moment, it can take you and say, hey, it's time to go. You're ready for it because you have lived that life. You have that particular faith in the divine, and you have always trained yourself to contemplate on the spiritual nature, the Atman, or your chosen ideal. That means we are ever ready. And to such a person, one who is ready and leaves that the world in this way, well, that is the greatest accomplishment. But if one has done all wonderful things in this worldly way, and is not ready for that, and leaves this world full of fear and suffering and ignorance, and then that shows that they have not really achieved what life was supposed to teach them. And therefore, they come again, get readmitted into the school, do the lessons until they understand the true transitory nature of this world and the eternal abode of the Atman, the eternal immortal state of the Atman, and seeks or practices spiritual discipline to realize that truth. So wherever we are in our spiritual journey, whatever time that is there, to be used wisely and dedicated to this spiritual goal. If one can do that, that is itself God's grace. If His grace is there, then all these things come. There's interest in spiritual teachings, there's faith in there. One walks in that journey, follows the teachings of the scriptures, saints and sages, cultivates dispassion, discrimination, kindness, compassion, devotion to truthfulness, unselfishness, charity, and all those spiritual disciplines, and tries to purify the mind of all the impurities that get accumulated when we are involved in this world. And so, and be ready for that last moment without any fear, great confidence and faith in the divine, and understanding the power of the sadhana that one has done, one is able to confront death. So, as we said, face the brute. Okay? Don't run away from it. And the way to face the brute is anchored in the knowledge. Self-knowledge, knowledge of the Atman, and in our devotion to the divine in His saving grace. Let us meditate on this eternal, immortal nature of the divine, or the presence of the supreme power in our own hearts that can take us from this shore across this ocean of samsara. Let us sit upright. Focus. Keep your back, neck and head in a relaxed upright position. Focus on your breath. Breathe in slowly and deeply. As you inhale, visualize that you breathe in a pure light that enters your lungs and spreads throughout your body, purifying and illuminating every cell of your body, every corner of your mind with its radiance. And as you breathe out that pure light and share it with the rest of the world, and build a wonderful protective armor around you, where the darkness of the world cannot enter into us. Breathe in slowly and deeply with this visualization. Let us pray for the welfare of all. May the divine, which is the ocean of infinite consciousness, knowledge, existence, beauty, purity, supreme peace, out of whom this whole universe and all living beings have come, by whom they are all sustained at every moment, and to whom they will all eternally eventually return, who resides in the heart of all beings as our inner consciousness. May the divine be gracious to us and bless us so that our mind does not run after the sense enjoyments of this world, but seek the true bliss that is within us. So the true inner purity, inner beauty, inner knowledge. May all be peaceful and joyful. May all seek the spiritual truth. Send out your prayer to your right. See your thoughts going out forever, reaching and uplifting all those it comes across. Send your prayers to your left, in front and behind, above and below, in all directions. Now withdraw your mind to yourself. Visualize that your physical body is filled with the divine light through and through. And that finer than your physical body is your subtle body, which is made of luminous ideas, spiritual ideas, and thoughts, which interpenetrates the physical body and sustains it, controls it. And that beyond even the mental body is the causal body made of pure intelligence, effulgence. And beyond that is that infinite ocean of consciousness out of which all these three have come. Visualize that your physical body merges into the mental body, just like ice melts into water. And through your sadhana, just like water will vaporize into water vapor, visualize your mental body of all thoughts and ideas merge into the causal body. And the causal body merges into that ocean of consciousness. This light in all directions, supreme peace, absolute beauty, unchanging, birthless and deathless, infinite, beyond time, beyond space, beyond cause and effect. Such is that ocean of Brahman. We are one with that ocean. Now visualize that out of that ocean of consciousness evolved two beings, both made out of pure light. One is a body which is very similar to yours, and the other in front of you, seated on a beautiful lotus full of freshness and fragrance, is your chosen ideal, made of pure light, with a wonderful smile, full of grace and compassion, and eagerness to bless you with all spiritual qualities. He is your chosen ideal. Out of that ocean of pure consciousness, which is Om, takes form, the divine form of your personal God, your chosen ideal. His name is the mantra given to you by your spiritual teacher. Feel his living presence and grace. Repeat the mantra and visualize the divine form. And as you repeat the mantra, the energy of the mantra solidifies that form in a more tangible way. So you can feel his radiance and the energy of the divine touching you, penetrating to you, drawing you to itself, so that you are a devotee, a divine child in the lap of their chosen ideal, in his personal care and protection, love and affection, like a child in the lap of the Divine Mother, free from all worries and tensions and fear. Such is the relationship between the child and the Divine Mother, between the devotee and his chosen ideal. And the child repeats the name of the Divine Mother, the mantra. Let us take total surrender at the feet of our chosen ideal, and knowing that the mantra and the divine are one and the same, and the mantra and the devotee is also one and the same. Try to feel the energy of the mantra filling you through and through from the core of your being, through the causal body, through the mental body, through the physical body, and all around you, engulfing you in a wonderful warm glow that protects you in its wonderful halo. With each repetition, this light, a new wave of that energy floods you through. Let us focus totally on the mantra, feel its flow, and keep the mind locked in this loop of the repetition of the mantra. Let's meditate in this way for a while. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. This reminder to all our participants, please note that we will not have this Saturday afternoon class in the following Saturday. That's because we are going to we'll be having a spiritual retreat over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday next weekend. And the subject is the science of mantras and their application in our spiritual life. And then following weekend, we will continue with our talks on the theme of meditation for well-being. Until then, keep safe. Namaste.